Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever SCMP Live Chat. I got Nick Atkin. He's the man in charge over there at SCMP MMA. And our special guest today is, of course, the one and only James Lynch, man. How you doing?
Doing well, guys. Thanks for having me on. Like I was telling you off air, big fan of South Morning China Post and the video content you guys have been doing. So the pleasure is all mine, as they say.
No doubt, man. It's all love, in this MMA community. But let's jump right into it, man. I want to talk about something that I recently tweeted out about, which was MMA content, man, being like stolen, everywhere you go, like especially on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like I go on YouTube and I'm searching up, researching and doing all kinds of stuff, and that's one thing I really noticed, especially the last year more than anything, is just all these channels popping up and benefiting and monetizing off of people like us, man. Like we go out there, we chase down the managers, we chase down the fighters, we set up these interviews, we create this content, and these guys on YouTube or wherever else they do it on, they're taking that, stripping it and putting it into their videos. And man, it sucks, man. Like I hate it because like I don't make no money off YouTube. People think like you get like a couple thousand views and you're making this money. You don't. The people that are ripping us off are the ones that are getting a lot of views, crazy views, and they're making the money. And James, you've been doing this longer than me. When did you first start noticing all of this happening?
This happened years ago. When I started doing the pros picks videos, like back when I was first, getting into video interviews, I was seeing it happen a lot where I'd see like the full upload of the video. Like the person didn't even get creative with it. They're just like uploading it on their channel. And I'm like, hold on a second here. And then I didn't even know that people did this. And then I sort of, then I started getting in the habit of like, Googling. And here's like a little tip for, content creators out there is just Google the title of your video and go into the video tab on Google and search for it and search for like recent. And then you can just tell by the author who's stolen your stuff. So yeah, I've had it happen to me a lot. I actually had a dispute with someone about a year or two ago where they were like trying to be like, well, I can give you credit. I'm like, yeah, but you're making money. Like you didn't do the work. I did the work. Like you're trying to take food off my table, sort of speaking. Like I don't make a living off YouTube, but that the monetization, the work that we're putting in, I mean, someone else shouldn't benefit from that. It should be us getting it. And you're right. I've seen more and more channels lately do it. And the trick they do with a lot of them is they'll steal the audio and then they'll put like video frames in there. And that's like one of their tricks that they're using. So YouTube doesn't always catch it, but I'm on to you people. Trust me. I watch a lot of content. So if I catch someone taking my stuff, you better believe I'm going to come after you and write that copyright form, which by the way, takes forever to fill out. Like the YouTube's got to do something a little bit easier about that. I know they have the match video system, but yeah, it's always having to fill out those forms. And I'll do it just out of principle because it's like, you're not taking like a ton of money off my table, but you shouldn't be able to, make any sort of money off work that I've done.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. That's one thing I noticed too, is like they'll take screenshots and then play the audio, or they'll even just take screenshots and just like repeat what the content of the interview. It's like, man, I don't know, and they don't give you credit. That's another aspect that I don't like too much about it. But man, I don't know what YouTube can do. I think YouTube has a lot of problems right now with everything that's going on that platform. But without YouTube, it'll be hard for us to do what we're doing right now at the same time. So, I just wanted to, like, if, people are watching this, I just wanted people to know that, if you go on there and watch these videos with guys just ripping off other guys, it's like you're supporting them and you're feeding them money. And that, for us in this position, man, that's just shitty, man. It's really shitty that people are doing that right now. But
and I talked about this. Sorry to interrupt you. I talked about this on my Q&A last week, my media Q&A, where I was talking about how I see a lot of creators as well just stealing Instagram live videos off fighters and posting that on their channel. Like that sucks too. Like don't do that stuff. Like be creative. A lot of it's just people being lazy. They don't know how to create their own original content, so they're going on there and stealing other people's stuff. Look, if you're reacting to something, that's fine, But if you're going out there and actually just directly uploading like a fighter's like Darren Till's like, you know, doing like an Instagram live in his pool, and you're uploading that for clicks, like that's your garbage. I mean, come up with something better than that, and try and get a little bit more creative like the rest of us have. So yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that. And I think that I'm glad you're talking about this because I think you know, we can educate some people here, because I think people think you can just use whatever footage you want. Another thing that annoys me is people just using UFC footage or using whatever and monetizing it without getting permission. Like, you're going to get caught. You're going to get sued by these people. You can't just go out there and monetize other people's stuff unless you get permission. And a lot of cases, they don't do that. So yeah, good on you for starting the show off. You got me a little riled up, but that's it's something near and dear to my heart, is people ripping off content.
Yeah, because it's just something that I've been seeing more and more and more and more lately as I go in and start researching fighters before an interview, and you know, it just boils over. You know what I mean? You feel it, like, man, like you put in all these years to create all these like channels and networks and stuff like that to kind of grow your brand, but then there's these guys just out there like the first month just ripping off everybody, and they don't have anything, man. They just going in there and YouTube and searching and stealing everything, and it just sucks, man. But anyways, let's switch over to a more positive note. You know what I mean? Like, I think today or this morning or last night, wherever you're in the world, it was announced that Petr Yan's gonna face Aljamain Sterling at UFC 255, I believe. You know, about time, James. I wanted to ask you, man. It's like, what was the holdup? You know what I mean? I thought that they were just waiting for the outcome of Moraes and Sandhagen. And if Sandhagen won, they were going to give the shot to Sterling. And if Moraes won, they might just go with him for the title shot because he got passed up because of Jose Aldo, right? And but at the same time, it's like, why did they wait for that fight? They should have just gave the shot to Sterling and you know, not have people speculate and worry about like who's the next fight for Yan, because you know Yan, he's gonna fight anybody because he's the champ, and that's kind of like the mentality he has. So what do you think, James? What was the holdup?
Well, Yan himself said he wanted to fight Sterling right after he won the title, so it's definitely not on Jan's end. Who's Marlon Moraes managed by, John? I think we all know. And it's that same manager who also got Cody Garbrandt a title shot after losing 3 of his last 4 fights. So, I mean, there's a lot of politics in this game. I think it's pretty evident that if Marlon would have won that fight, he would have leapfrogged Sterling. And the way the UFC could have justified it was, well, Marlon knocked out Sterling back in 2017, right? Like, we were seeing the politics of that sort of put into gear. And I don't have a doubt that that's why they waited until, like, you notice how we found that out just a couple days after that fight. Of course, that's what was going to happen. They were going to do Moraes for the title. And look, I get it. He was promised, well, he was supposed to fight Yan. Then they had the COVID stuff. Then Aldo got slotted in, and then they had the vacant title fight. Like, I understand from Marlon's perspective being upset because whether you thought he beat Aldo or not, on the record, he did beat Jose Aldo. He did not lose his last fight. So you could make that argument. But I mean, Aljamain Sterling had an A+ performance, finishing Corey Sandhagen in the first round. That win looks even better now with what Sandhagen did to Moraes. So, yeah, like I said, everything's falling into place, though, because now we have Sterling fighting Yan, and we have Alex Perez fighting Figueiredo, who should have, I mean, either him or Moreno should have fought for the title even before Garbrandt was in the equation. So all has worked out well in the end.
Everybody that's listening right now, if you got any questions or comments, just, you know, add them to the chat and we'll get to them, you know.
Oh yeah, we got a few questions already, John, from people lined up. So
do it.
Tell me when you want me to bring them up. Yeah,
anytime there's a gap. Yeah.
Okay, first one is from Drake Riggs, our man Drake over in US, I think. Drake, sorry if I got that wrong, man. Drake obviously been doing some great work with his new Rising podcast, Broaden Horizon. Go check it out. He's got a question for you guys. Keep killing it, guys. Congrats on the show. John, as for a Q, who's the Korean MMA GOAT between Korean Zombie and Ham? In my opinion, Ham for all her titles. John, you want to kick it off, or James?
I'll let John take this one. This is more his wheelhouse. You know?
Hey, man. I've been saying it for the last couple of years. The GOAT in Korean MMA is Hamsae, man. No, hands down. It could change in the next couple of years, but just look at what Ham has done throughout her career, and she's a pioneer. You know, on top of that, and she's holding like the Road FC title, the Ryzen title. Before that, I believe she was the Deep champion. She's fought in the UFC. She's one of the first ones that was an atomweight that actually just went up a weight class and fought all the straw weights. She didn't have much success, but she fought her ass off and gave it that old, college try. Not much success there, but I feel like if she go back to the UFC right now, it would be a different story, because you're seeing her develop into this like much more cerebral fighter, and her striking is much better. She might be not as strong as some of the strawweights, but I feel like she's gotten stronger in the past couple of years, and that experience of fighting in Ryzen and all the top competition in Asia is going to benefit her even more. But yeah, the Korean Zombie, on the other hand, he's got a big fight coming up. We're going to get to that towards the end of the show, break that down a little bit. But yeah, if he goes on and wins the title and beats Volkanovski and defends it a couple of times, he would have a strong argument as the greatest of all time for Korean fighters in general. Nick, James, man, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think part of it too is that big gap that Zombie had in his career, like you mentioned, where he had to go do the military service. So, I mean, you can't, if you're looking at it as a whole, I mean, what Ham's done recently, especially, is got to give her a credit. So, yeah, no issues with that argument. I'm not going to go against my man John here when it comes to talking about Korean MMA. That would just be a huge mistake.
All right. Any other questions coming up?
Yeah,
man?
we got a bunch. How about this?
Mm-hmm.
I think the Cyril Gan and Ante Delia fight just got cancelled because Ante got COVID. So Fight Night Picks is asking, how could Cyril Gan and Ante Delia go as far as being pushed and signing posters? Oh, it's contract status. Sorry, not COVID. Without Delia's contract status being 100% free and clear. Maybe James, you kick this one off.
Yeah, what's PFL doing here? Like they've already had bad press last week with the whole, they wouldn't release Lance Palmer and they wouldn't release some of the other fighters. Now they're suing them, and now you got a heavyweight who wants to fight, and you're saying that, according from what I read from ESPN, could be wrong about this. I'll get you guys to weigh in after, but in February his contract was set to expire, but PFL had the right, I think, to match or something. But there's obviously he can't fight right now because they're not doing shows, so he felt like he was out of his contract, and now they're trying to hold him back. Like, why would you do this? What are you possibly going to gain here? Do you think that, like, this, it's not like we're talking about like Kayla Harrison here. Like, this is just a heavyweight that, sort of like nothing outstanding. Like, I didn't even know that this guy was a member of PFL's roster until he was fighting here on Saturday. So why are they holding this guy back? This looks so bad. They already have bad press for not doing shows. We could get into, I mean, that's a podcast in itself, but just terrible move by PFL here. Let the guy fight. Let him fight. You guys aren't putting shows on. Let the man, get it, make a living. And I also read in that story, he hasn't gotten any compensation for, some of them are supposed to get that monthly thing. He hasn't got that either. So totally bad move here by PFL. Let the guy fight.
Yeah, Chris, or not Chris, Nick, you spoke with some of the big dogs over at PFL recently. What have they been saying about what's going on this year?
A whole lot of nothing, really. They kind of just saying we'll be back in the spring, but they haven't got any shows. As you said, they're giving it the old college try. I think they're really trying to generate interest at the moment, but the fact is they don't have any fights on at the moment. And when there's no fights, there's no, like, one championship had the same problem, right? Between February and July, August, they didn't put on a show, and there's only so many articles you can write about a promotion not putting on any shows, especially one where there's no fighters trash talking each other. I think it's the same case in the PFL, right? So I think they need to find other ways of generating interest in that. But yeah, it looks like April next year when they'll be back. That's the guess I would make, and from what I've been told by CEO Peter Murray. I haven't got much else to say.
That's a long time, like these fighters are sitting around and they're not getting paid. And I just recently talked to Johnny Case. He was in Korea helping the Korean Zombie prepare for Brian Ortega, and he's also signed to the PFL, and he's been out for a long time. And luckily, he's getting paid, compensated for training and helping, the Korean Zombie and actually making some income. But there's a lot of fighters, like you said, James, that haven't received anything. And I believe that the Korean fighter Jo Sung-bin, he's actually signed, or he's been signed to the PFL for a while now, and they just recently announced it like last week or 2 weeks ago. But I think he's received like one payment in the whole time he's been with the PFL. So he could have actually fought for another promotion, but he's signed exclusively to them, and they're not going to be back until next April, and he's only been paid one time. And that doesn't make any sense, man. Like, let these guys fight somewhere else. I'm just interested in where this lawsuit is, like what stage this lawsuit that they're talking about they're doing is at. Have you heard anything about the lawsuit, James?
Nothing recently. I just heard that, yeah, they have some big names involved. Apparently, the lawyer who is, working on this case is actually a Henzo Gracie student or someone that had trained under him. So, yeah, there's a lot of people behind this. But like I said, I don't know why they would do this. Like, what would be the risk in letting them fight somewhere else and then they have to come back? Let's say you loan them out for a bit and then they can come back and fight for the promotion. What's the risk in that? They might get injured. Whatever. You're not doing any shows anyways. It's not like you're missing time if they are injured. So I don't get this move here. I really don't understand it. I mean, if they can't put on shows, whatever, but don't let the fighters suffer because of that. Now, they have released some fighters. We should mention that. I know Jeremy Kennedy, for example, got his release. He's now with Bellator. Damon Jackson got his release as well. There's been a few others, but they got to do what's right here and let the fighters fight and make a living. Because, guys like Lance Palmer, they're not getting any younger. If he wants to go fight in the UFC, let him go fight.
Yeah, it's not like Lance Palmer needs any money. I mean, I think he's cashed in like 2 million, right? He's won two straight tournaments, so he should go somewhere else and test his skills, man. Especially in the UFC, of course, man. If you have the money, if you have the funds, why not? You're not chasing money anymore. You got to chase those titles. So let them go to the UFC. But then at the same time, on the flip side, you understand like PFL wants to keep some of their name fighters, right? But you got to pay them. You promise them money. You got to pay them. Give them their monthly salary or whatever you're doing for them. But yeah, you got to do that for them, man. Just I don't know. It's a real weird position and real weird situation that the fighters are in and the promotion, because they just like stalled out and said we're gonna wait until the next year. So hopefully that does get situated and the fighters do get released and be able to fight somewhere, Bellator, the UFC, one championship, wherever. Let them go. Before we get to some more questions, I want to get into like the Tony Ferguson versus Nate Diaz versus Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor drama that's going on. James, what do you think about all of this? What is the fight to make, man? Like, there's so many guys just like throwing shots at each other and like making negotiations on Twitter. And what do you think? What is your overall assessment of all this going on?
I see both sides of it. I do. And I'm not siding with the UFC by any means by saying this, but I do get the side of that. The UFC's not making their full buck. I know they were sort of saying that things are going well, but they have to be losing some money to an extent with doing all the COVID tests, with not having crowds. That's got to end up hurting them a little bit in the long run. So if you want to put on these big fights, like we're talking about like huge fights that are like, fights of the year type thing, like a Ferguson or Poirier and McGregor, or like, even Michael Chandler, throw that in the mix against like a Ferguson. That's a mega fight as well too. So I think there's that side of it. And then on the other side, these guys deserve to get paid they deserve to get paid, right? Like I saw a bit of Poirier's interview today with Ariel Helwani where he's talking about, look, I've been in the UFC forever and you're giving a guy Michael Chandler the same money as I'm getting. Where's the logic in that? So, it's a tricky situation right now. It's the same reason I think you're not seeing Jon Jones fight right now. I think they're going to wait and see what happens with the audiences and see if they can generate a little bit more money in their pockets, the fighters, and then for the UFC as well. Because like I've always said, no matter what, the UFC has to put on shows. The ESPN, they're on the hook for putting on a certain amount of events, whether they're from the Contender Series or wherever. It doesn't matter. They're going to fill up those cards. So they don't necessarily need some of these bigger stars. They can find ways to fill those holes on their own in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with any of those matchups you mentioned, but I do think it's really tricky to negotiate these bigger fights when you're not getting full crowds and optimal finances on both sides of the coin.
It seems like a lot of these fighters, especially Conor McGregor, he's giving this like perception like he wants to fight, and then they were talking about the date January 23rd, him and Dustin Poirier, and then Conor McGregor tweets out about like he wants to sell out Cowboy Stadium. That's not even realistic. Do you know, even the NFL doesn't even have crowds yet.
Yeah, Connor, do you know that COVID's going on, by the way? Like, that there aren't people in the stadium? Like, who are you going to fill in there? Like, virtual seats? Like, come on.
Yeah, and also the what is it? I guess when you're rich like that and you're sitting on a yacht, you could your life is not the same life as everybody else. COVID is not a factor, right? It's just you're just eating what you want to eat and you're doing what you want to do, and nobody's really around you. So, I don't know. I think that he's kind of like blue balling everybody. You know, with all
Oh, he
these
always
tweets.
does. Look, he tweet. I mean, how many times has this guy retired? You know, everyone takes what he says on Twitter like verbatim, and like I already knew today when he tweeted that thing about like, oh, I agree to January 23rd. All these sites are going to run and say Conor McGregor's agreed to the fight. It's going to happen. Well, no, it doesn't happen until the UFC has the contract. They make the poster. Everything's good to go. And even then, you still got to worry about injuries and other things happening. So, yeah, I mean, it's wishful thinking, but and obviously, I mean, I think Connor tweeted that, and I saw check like 20 minutes later, it's already at like 2,000 retweets. So the guy knows how to control the game. But like I always tell people, until they actually sign the paper, until Dana White says this is a done deal, don't believe any of that stuff, because we've seen wolf tickets before on, you know, Masvidal and Nick Diaz. I mean, there's countless fights that were said to be done and didn't end up coming to fruition.
Yeah, this tweet that Conor McGregor put out, I think he just did that just to get people riled up, and you know, they're talking about Manny is after that. I see the Manny fight happening before. I don't see Conor McGregor fighting in the UFC anytime soon. I think the Manny Pacquiao fight's gonna happen. Both of them are signed to Paradigm. When you got the same management, it must be easy to make a fight, right? So I think Manny Pacquiao, they're gonna fight. They probably won't fight in the US. It'll probably be, hopefully it's in Macau, so I could go and cover the show. What do you think, James? Do you think McGregor is gonna come back anytime soon?
Like I said, I don't think until we get crowds back. I agree with you, though. I think the boxing thing is more likely because there's more money on the table with that. They're already putting on big name boxing fights without crowds. They have pockets. The UFC is not going to fork out that type of money to see that type of fight happen. And did you guys hear what happened with the whole thing with Paradigm, by the way? Not to sidetrack here, but it was like 2 weeks ago. Manny Pacquiao comes out and says, I'm not signed to Paradigm, because he actually signed with Paradigm like months ago. There's a huge press release and all this stuff. And then we kind of didn't hear anything about it. And then they interviewed Manny recently, and he's like, I'm not with Paradigm. Then this week, I'm with Paradigm. I'm happy to start my career with them. It's like, what? Because like Audie a couple weeks ago or last week was like, he signed to us. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. And then Manny said like the opposite, and now they've come to terms. So yeah, I think if they can get it together, seriously, you got to follow the series of events. It's been hilarious to watch. But yeah, I think that's likely to happen because there's a lot of money for both guys on the table. And I've even talked to some boxers. They want to see that fight just out of a curiosity perspective, with Pacquiao getting a little bit up there in age, and with, you know, McGregor, obviously, you know, there's always that school of thought of how did he really do in the Mayweather fight, but there would be interest, and there would be more money for him in that fight than with Dustin Poirier.
Cole Shelton slapping me in the face about my comments right now. Thank you, Cole. I said that there was no crowds, but I guess in Texas, the Cowboy Stadium, they already have 25,000 people in the stands. So that's a good sign for Conor McGregor. He said he's friends with Jerry Jones, but I don't know. It's you know, that and fighting, two totally different sports. You know, you don't see you know, like promotions putting on events with crowds right now, not especially big crowds, right? You know, I know in Australia, in Perth, they had an event like last week, I believe, and they had a crowd there because COVID is not that serious, and they've managed it very well. But you know, I don't know, man. There's too much going on, and I don't think the UFC wants to go through all of that until if the UFC does put on a fight. I believe that the first fights with crowds will be in Vegas. I think that's what they want to do, right? Yeah. There's no other place.
They want to go back to T-Mobile if they can. I would have no doubt about that. That was their home, and now it's been the Apex because obviously there's, you know, the production costs and all that stuff is way cheaper because they own the thing. So, yeah, I'm with you there, but we'll see. We have no idea how things are going to look. You know, it's funny. I listen to sports talk radio anytime I'm in my car, and you know, other sports are dealing with this right now, like MLS with the soccer. Like they don't even have crowds right now. You know, football, they've had all these positive cases and things like that. So it's difficult, right? Like the UFC, you know, all the power to them. They figured out a way to do it, but you're going to have some unhappy fighters on the top end that are used to getting the big bucks. But like I said, UFC probably not as willing to negotiate for those types of prices without having the crowds there.
Nick, you know, with Macau, have you heard anything about them putting on any like even like concerts or shows, or what's the economy like in Macau right now with COVID?
It's not going well. The government does help them out there, obviously, but you know, we can't even go to Macau, and we're a ferry ride away, half-hour boat ride. I doubt they could put on a McGregor v Pacquiao there. There wouldn't be fans there. All the casinos were shut down during the pandemic for obvious reasons. It's like the UFC doesn't see that, or Las Vegas doesn't see why you need to shut down casinos, because it's tourism, right? And then you've got so many people coming from so many places, taking it back, the virus back to other places. But I don't think that would happen at all. I do not see them greenlighting McGregor v Pacquiao in one of the casinos there. You could see Legend FC have gone quiet. They have an actual deal with the Macau government and with the casinos in Macau. I think the MGM Grand is their one, and they haven't had a show since December 28th when I went last year. And I've been asking Audi for updates, and he seemed optimistic a few months ago, but then it's gone quiet. And until they say, "Hey, we're back in business," there, I can't see anything happening. This is just McGregor. I don't know, where did you hear that Macau stuff? I heard it loosely as well, but I'm not entirely sure where it came from.
Well, I think Macau is always being thrown around with boxing. You know, I heard Macau when they were talking about the rematch with Wilder and Fury, and that was one of the locations that they were talking about. So Macau is always a spot. You know, because they're willing to spend money. It seems like, to bring in a big event. And so
they had
boxing,
a Pacquiao fight before, right, as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a couple of other big boxing events over there too. So you just got to keep your eye open. And another thing is, like, man,
in here.
Macau is dead right now. And also, like, James was talking about, like, he was following, like, the chain of events, right? And it's almost becoming exhausting to be like a fan of MMA, don't you think? With all the to pay attention to the drama, especially when you interview fighters and you ask them about, like, hey, did you see this happen, or are you following this? And they're like, no, I don't even know if that's even going on, and I kind of understand their point of view. It's like, it's very exhausting. James, is it exhausting to just watch what's going on, because half the stuff that's going on online is not real?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, it's probably one of the most annoying parts of the sport. Like, it would be great if everyone just embraced all the other fighters outside of, your Conors and everyone else. But unfortunately, that's not what people click on. So you got to bring up that stuff. You got to cover it. Yeah, I mean, I hate the quote stuff. Like, I hate, like, some fighter says something bad about other fighter, every site runs with it. It's like a wildfire on social media that some fighter said that, and then we're back to something else. Like, I just want to talk about the fights. I want to talk the bookings, the matchups, the training camps, all that stuff. I don't like talking about the Conor McGregor sneezed and we've all of a sudden got 50 articles about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Do we have any more questions, Nick?
There's a ton in the chat. There's a ton.
Yeah.
Let's get to some of those.
Go back to Cole Shelton. This one was asked a while ago.
Yeah.
Another PFL question. I don't know if we actually did cover this topic, but yeah, he's just asking when we think PFL, which day they're going to be on when they return. What do you guys think, John or James?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The Bellator thing's interesting as well too, because I know they've committed to Thursdays, but then when you get into some of the other sports coming back that do, like college football and things of that nature, Thursday night football, like, those are things you're going to be going head to head against. So that is one thing to kind of pause and think about. But for PFL, I'm with you. The Tuesday slot seems to work because Contender Series doesn't do their shows year round, at least, like, we don't get that indication. They are coming back next month. But that would be a good day for them because it's kind of, a little bit separate. Or you could do Wednesday nights. That's when Tough used to air. That's another night that I think they could get some wiggle room in. But I think the big thing is just finding a day where you're not going head to head with other cards. Because, I mean, how many times have we complained about this, John? Just you and I talking personally. Like, is it not annoying when, like, a Bellator show's on and a UFC show is on? You got to pick which one. You got to flip back and forth, or PVR one, avoid spoilers, try and go watch the other one after. Like, it's tough. There's a lot of fights going on. So if you can make the choice easier for the viewer, you're gonna have more people watching.
PFL, man, if they return, I think that they should take the Wednesday night slot. A couple reasons. Number one, it's Hump Day. Everybody loves Hump Day. Number two, Wednesday wing night at the local bar. Lots of people go to Wednesday wing nights. Discount wings, and you just throw up those fights. There's more eyes on the fights, more viewers. That could be a possible benefit. And plus, yeah, you're not battling with Tuesday night Contender Series. You're not battling with Bellator, especially on Thursday nights. And Bellator is also, if they continue with Thursdays, they're fighting against Thursday night football, NFL, which is huge. Friday, not so great to have fights on Friday. I feel like a lot of people go out and become social on Fridays, even though it's still COVID era. People are being social anyways. They don't care about the rules and regulations, so they're they're going out. But Wednesday, I feel like is the best. Monday, not so good. Monday Night Football is there. But yeah, Wednesday. I love Wednesday. PFL comes back on Wednesday. I wouldn't mind if Bellator would, I like Bellator that they have it on Thursdays, but man, I wish they would have picked Wednesday. I thought that Wednesday would have been a better time slot.
Yeah, but then they'd miss this show. So.
Oh, that's right. Damn it, Bellator.
Mm-hmm. That's why you do PFL on
similar.
Wednesdays, so we can watch the replay.
PFL bubble.
Is the bubble confirmed? I've been told they have contingency plans. It sounds like they have a bubble, for April, I think.
But this is what I don't get. If they're going to do a bubble next year, which they should, by the way, why? Like, if the things aren't back to normal, why aren't they doing the shows this year? That's what I don't get. Like, is it like LFA, Titan FC, and these are all like companies that have the Fight Pass, broadcast. CES, they're doing a show right now as we're speaking right now. CES is doing a show. I understand it's easier for them to do it because they have the Fight Pass deal. Isn't PFL on ESPN? Would that not be even more reason to do it? Is like, what's holding them up there? I'd really like to know. That's like a huge mystery as to why they're not doing shows. I've yet to hear a straight answer, and I just wish them to be honest. They want to come out and say, "Hey, look, we rely heavily on our crowds." Fair enough. But you can't leave people in the dark here and not know what's really going on. And that must be the reason, or they're just disorganized. I have no idea. But come on, every other promotion's doing shows here. You guys have big backers. You guys are paying $1 million to each winner, and you can't put shows on? Come on. I don't buy that. There's got to be something more behind it.
Yeah, I interviewed Randy Couture, and he said he agrees that they don't want to blow the format of PFL, which is regular season, obviously, playoffs, championship fights. They don't want to just throw that away because they think they like the way the format works. But I'm thinking, why can't you just do like a 2020-21 season, like, spread over?
Do what the NHL did.
Year.
They had NHL in hockey. They did like a play-in series for the playoffs, and then they just did like a different format. Now it wasn't ideal. There was a couple times in the playoffs where they do like back-to-back games, which my Canucks got screwed a couple times on that. And that, I think cost them the series, but that's another topic for another day. But my point is that it's possible to do. They could do a condensed playoff format. Why not do like a round robin, like in March Madness or something where, hey, number 1 seed fights number 8. Number 8 beats number 1. You're going to the finals. You have the chance to win $1 million. How fun would that be? They don't even think like that. So that would be something I would recommend if they were going to go that route, because it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, man. They should have made some adjustments. They should have just went straight into the playoffs and just put everybody in the brackets and have them fight. Maybe even just like 2 rounds. Or even 1 round. I think Invicta did that, right? In a one-night tournament where they only fought 1 round and they fought like multiple times. And if you win twice, you move on to the next event and you fight the next guy in the bracket. And eventually, it wouldn't take as long to get to the tournament finals, and someone wins $1 million and everybody's happy. People are getting paid. And it seems like PFL, they have a lot of money to give away, or, at least pay these guys with. So do something, man, because right now PFL, man, we're like really shitting on PFL, but it just seems like they never made any adjustments, man. Like James said, contingency plans, there were none. The UFC it seems like Dana White was like Mr. Contingency plans from the beginning, man. He was just like, okay, well, let's go here. Oh, this doesn't work. Let's go here. It's just like he's just moving at 1,000 miles per hour. And that's the biggest difference between Dana White and all these other promotions in the world. That guy is moving 1,000 miles per hour. Everybody's moving 100 miles per hour. And it's not working for them right now.
No, it is not. By the way, I saw something in the chat. I just wanted to bring this up. Nick Alley beat John Gotti tonight at CES. That's a big upset. Nick Alley. John Gotti's obviously sort of like a staple for CES with the last name, especially, and all that stuff. But good for Nick Alley. Interviewed him. He was supposed to fight Marcus Davis, the UFC veteran, who's like 50. He was supposed to fight him earlier. I guess that got scrapped. Shocker. A guy who's 50 can't get licensed to fight. But Nick Alley won. Props to Nick Alley. Just wanted to give him a quick shout out there. And Cole, I saw Cole's question about, how much will the loss set him back? Probably nothing. I mean, honestly, they could give him a can the next fight, get him right back in the driver's seat. He goes on Contender Series and it's all good. Literally, like, one loss on the regional scene is not detrimental to his fighter's career. There's plenty of fighters who have losses and still make it to the big show. So I know where Cole's coming from, but good for Nick Alley. If you're CES, you use this and you build him. just like they should have with Zach Freeman when he knocked out Pico or finished Pico in that Bellator NYC card. That's what you have to do when you get a big upset like that. There, I'm putting my matchmaker hat on for CES.
Awesome. Well, John Gotti the third, man. I feel like he's gonna be, once he's about 10 fights in, he's gonna be somewhere. He's gonna be in Bellator. He's gonna be in the UFC. He's gonna get his chance, and it helps a lot that he's John Gotti. You know what I mean? That name, anywhere you print that, people are gonna look. So, yeah, shout out to Nick Atkin, man. Great performance, and John Gotti will be back, man. He seems like a mentally tough guy. So, those mentally tough guys, they could come back pretty quick off a loss. Now, we got any more questions, or should we go to the next?
This one's been here for a while, and he asked it twice, Mystic Gamer. So let's get to it. Neil Magney, right, James?
I was just going to say, yeah, that was the latest I saw, is that Magney wants to fight him. Let's just get this guy a fight. It's a tough situation that Khamzat's in right now, right? Because he's not ranked. And, I've seen some debates on whether he should be ranked or not. I personally don't think he should be, even though he's destroying these guys, because what division would you put him in? Like, is he top 10 at middleweight? Is he top 10 at welterweight? Like, it's really tough to say, right? And then on top of that, if you're like a guy who's ranked, what's the incentive? The only thing is sort of the momentum thing, right? This guy's the talk of the town. But then if you lose, it's like a big risk. Like, this is where I think things get a little bit difficult. Like, I think if you're a higher ranked fighter, like, for example, I think like a Leon Edwards should fight a Khamzat. Like, what do you have to lose other than, obviously a guy who's not ranked very high, but you get all that momentum. I mean, Leon's lost that since his last fight. That makes sense. But like, if you're like a Vicente Luque, it doesn't really do much for you to beat him in the sense that, like, yes, you get that hype, but like, it's not like they're going to build him up after type thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's harder for the lower tier fighters to get a fight like him, which is probably what the UFC is looking at. But it's those higher tier guys that I think might have a better opportunity to fight him just because he's got the momentum and they could sort of steal off that. But we'll see. To answer your question, though, I think it's going to be Neil Magney, because that guy's game to fight anyone.
I don't like this narrative that, I don't know if the UFC is pumping this out. Maybe his management is, that nobody wants to fight him. It's the hardest. He's the hardest guy to get a fight for. I think Dana White said that in a recent interview. I don't believe that. I believe there's a lot of guys that want to fight Khamzat, man. I feel like I just interviewed Ian Heinisch. He's ranked number 15. He said he'll fight. He said double book me with Khamzat. I'll fight Brendan Allen and then I'll fight Khamzat, or I'll fight Khamzat and then fight Brendan Allen after that. Double book me. He wants that push too. You know what I mean? He wants to face that guy. He's confident against him. So why not? You know what I mean? I don't understand this narrative. Like, nobody wants to fight. I understand why, like, let's say a top 10, top 5 guy might not take that risk. I understand that. But there's a lot of guys that want to fight him. And James, I agree with you. He shouldn't be ranked. He hasn't fought anybody that's ranked. So why would he be ranked? You know what I mean? He hasn't even fought anybody on the verge of the rankings. And I feel like someone like Ian Heinisch, who's number 15, would be a perfect fight for him. And like you said, Neil Magney is most likely going to be the next fight, because it seems like he's going to sit in that welterweight division, right? Not in that 185. So yeah.
Well, I think part of the problem too is he's got to decide which division he's going to be at. You can't just keep jumping back and forth, because that's one of the issues I have with the rankings. Is like, you've got a guy like Anthony Pettis who, like, what division's he fighting in, right? Is he a welterweight? Is he a lightweight? Like, we don't really know. Like, I think like Conor for a long time was still ranked at lightweight, like, but he hasn't, like, his last fight was at welterweight, and it seems like he wants to sort of just do fights at welterweight. So who knows? Like, they have to figure that out too. I think they need to, like, send a note to the fighter being like, dude, what's going on here? You got to figure out which weight class you're in, because it takes up slots. Like, I saw someone complaining, and I agree with them, about Ortega still being ranked. If you haven't fought for a year, they should take you out of the rankings, remember where you sat, and then decide to put you back in there. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on the rankings, but I think that's what makes it harder for Khamzat as well, is like, what division are you fighting in? Pick one, and then if and then sort of run with it. If it's welterweight and that's where you're going to be at your best, try that out. If things don't go well, you go up to 85. That's how I look at it.
All right. So before we go on to some more questions, I wanted to get into this whole Jon Jones admitting that he was hiding under the cage when the Nevada Athletic Commission came to drug test him, and he said that he was smoking marijuana and he didn't want to get busted for that. And was this a smart move, James, to admit this stuff, especially with all those picograms and everything that's going on in his past?
No, I mean, no, but then it's Jon Jones. Like, if this was any other fighter who said something like that, they would have been punished. It's Jon Jones. Look, the guy can do literally whatever he wants outside the cage. He's done all types of terrible things. And he's still on the roster. And you know, this idea that, you know, it's, you know, that he's going to get in trouble for this. I just don't see it happening. It's like Conor McGregor, same thing. Like when you reach a certain star level, you can get away with a lot. And we've seen fighters do far less. Like what was the Aussie guy? Sassoli, right? He got in like an assault and they cut him. Mm-hmm. But it's like, how many times have we seen like Mike Perry got into a fight with an old guy and he's still on the roster, right? Like, so it just goes to show that like, if it comes down to business, you know, if you can make the UFC money, we're going to give you a long leash. But if you can't make us money, if you're someone we don't really care about, we'll cut you at the flip of a dime, which they've done time and time again to any fighter. So yeah, not a good idea by Jon, but Jon's got that God mentality right now, which is, you know, I can do whatever I want because he has, and he's still on the roster.
Yeah, I completely agree. He can do whatever he wants. It seems like, you know, and the UFC is not going to really punish him for it. And I thought it was just, I don't know. Like I actually spoke with Jan Blachowicz yesterday about Jon Jones and this particular situation of him admitting this. And Jan said he don't even believe Jon. He said that he thinks Jon lies all the time. Like half his tweets are lies, it seems like. And you know, that's what makes Israel so fun to see this back and forth, right? Because Israel kind of puts out all the facts, and then Jon comes back with just like what he feels like should be said at that moment. What do you think about this back and forth with these two guys, James?
It's good. I mean, look, a lot of it's on, you know, gone over the line or whatever, but that's what you need to do to get people interested in a fight. Like that, first off, is just an amazing fight. Doesn't need to happen right now, but that is an awesome fight. And having these little things, these back and forths, it only adds to it. Like I say, if you're a fighter, you know, get yourself out there, get a personality out there. I mean, I do think it helps you in your career. Look at a guy like Bilal Muhammad. You know, he's been a pretty decent fighter in the octagon, but he's become like a fan favorite just because of how he is on Twitter. He's got his own show now on Anakin Florian's network. Like that's what you got to do, is you got to put yourself out there and you got to think of yourself as a brand. And these two guys going back and forth, I think it's great. Of course, it's crossing the line, but I mean, these guys are fighters. They're not, you know, guys going to like a nice, you know, buttoned up, you know, opera or something like that. You know what I mean? Like these are professional fighters that beat each other up for a living. So I don't think we should expect too much, but at the same time, yeah, I think it adds more interest to a fight like this, and I'm all for it.
Do you think the animosity is beyond what Jones had with Cormier?
That's a good question. I think it is, only because, you know, Cormier's not as like Izzy will go there. I mean, he's talking about doing stuff to, you know, Paulo Costa's coach's face, if you know what I'm saying. That's not something Daniel Cormier would ever say, right? So I feel like what makes this interesting is like Jon finally has a guy who's going to bite back. Like he's had opponents where they're like, you won't, you know, do this or whatever. But if you look at like his last like 10 opponents, other than maybe like Rashad, maybe Quentin Rampage Jackson, maybe, but like there's no one as clever and as popular as Israel Adesanya. So that's where like things are amplified even more, in that he has a sparring partner, a verbal sparring partner, so to speak, right? Like it's not a case of like when Colby fought Robbie Lawler, for example. Robbie's not going to say anything, and the fight's just going to be, you know, taking place in the cage as opposed to anything outside of it.
Nick, we got any more questions? I'm pretty sure there are some.
Yes, sir. How about this one? Did you guys watch Bellator France broadcast on the BBC, massive platform in the UK? Yeah, I can attest to that. But I think it was on BBC iPlayer, which is their OTT platform. But anyway, still great for them. Any thoughts on this? Growth for MMA? Why Bellator, BBC didn't represent MMA favorably too?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's from what I hear, it's a big platform. I don't live in the UK. I live in Canada, and we can't even watch it on TV here. I think everything is on YouTube, I believe. I'm not even entirely sure. I've had to watch all the fights kind of in other ways to catch up on stuff. But yeah, they got to figure that out here in Canada. You're missing a huge market here. You got a bunch of Canadian fighters on your roster. They got to get that sorted out as far as a TV deal, because we don't have CBS Sports Network here in Canada. So I can only speak for that, but BBC, I know that's a pretty big network. So I would think that's pretty good for Bellator to get that extra exposure. And yeah, I mean, it's good to see Bellator trying different avenues as far as that.
Yeah, and I'm happy for Bellator that they actually got into France first before the UFC. That's great, and any TV deal is great for any promotion. You know that, James. Like a lot of these promotions, they can't even survive without a TV deal, right? There's a lot of money right there on the table for them. And yeah, they, you know, broadcasting on BBC, even if it's on the OTT platform, it's great for them, and hopefully it grows into something that they could produce and show on one of their main channels on BBC, because I know they have probably multiple channels out there. Like myself, I don't live in the UK, so I don't know how many channels they have of BBC, but yeah, I know
Well,
it's massive out there.
You got BBC One,
Mhm.
BBC Two, which are both free in terms of if you pay your TV license, you get them free, and those have massive audience. Anything on there usually gets millions of viewers. They've got BBC Three and I think BBC Four, but those are on cable, and you've got to pay for that. But I would say it's not automatically. If you're on BBC, you're not going to automatically get viewing ratings and views. If you don't attract a high number, they will just get rid of you, because they could do a rerun of some sitcom from 30 years ago, like 40 Towers or something, and that'll get millions. And if you're Bellator and you're pulling like 500,000, it's easier for them to not pay Bellator money, and they've got 40 Towers ready to go. I think something happened similarly with this wrestling promotion who were on ITV, which is another free channel in the UK, and it was called World of Sport Wrestling, and everyone thought, oh, they're going to challenge WWE, they're going to be bigger. It was cancelled after 1 year because they were pulling in 1 million, but that was nothing really. You want to be pulling in 6 million if you're think about how many people in the UK. Anyway, that's my rant over. So yeah.
Well,
Well, I
good.
guess
I'm learning stuff here. I like it, Nick. So don't downplay your knowledge there. That's very good.
yeah, man, like we would never know nothing like that because we never lived in the UK. But the thing is, like, like with man, I lost my train of thought right there at that snap, at that moment.
You're talking about how good it was that Bellator was, doing stuff.
Yeah,
trying
it was
different
great,
avenues.
but then like he mentions, like, if you're not getting the views, man, so it shows you how important to have like the broadcasters on board to grow the sport. If they're dedicated to growing the sport, I guess it doesn't matter if you get 500,000 views compared to the 40 million views a rerun would get if they're dedicated to it. But if they're not dedicated to it, I guess it's most likely in the contract where if you don't get views, then we're not going to extend your contract past this certain period of time. And we'll see, in the next couple of events, if BBC continues with this, if a lot of people watch this event on their platform or not. Man, like he said in the comment, like BBC hasn't been favorable to MMA in the past. Maybe the tune has changed, maybe not. We'll figure it out when we see Bellator next time on BBC.
For sure.
Yeah. You want another question?
Now, yeah, let's hit another question, and then we'll get into
right.
the Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega next.
Khabib and Conor. Yeah. Do you think Khabib really won't fight Conor even if he gets paid a lot? Khabib doesn't really mention Conor a lot. It's usually his manager.
I could see this being true just because of the fact that this goes beyond fighting. I mean, there's some real deep hatred there. You got to remember the Dolly incident, the whole, the stuff that Conor said about his religion. Like Khabib strikes me as the type of guy that's, really, that stuff's really important to him, the family and all that. This isn't a guy who's living a lavish lifestyle. At least it doesn't appear that way from what we're seeing from, some of the behind the scenes stuff. So I think some of the stuff that Conor said, Khabib does not want to give Conor any sort of credit. I don't think he wants to go through all that again of having to deal with, Conor's crew and his crew and everyone going back and forth. I think he just wants to fight and he wants to set a good example. So I think, and with, him getting suspended and all that, I think it really put a sour taste in his mouth. And I do believe him that I don't think he will give Conor a rematch. And we'll see what the UFC has to say about that because, they got to make some money here. But yeah, I think there's too much bad blood there that if Khabib had his choice, if there's other options, I think he would take those over Conor because it's not about money for him. At least I don't get that sense from just, seeing his interviews and other things that he's spoken about.
I also agree with that. I don't think Khabib is going to fight Conor again. Guys from like Dagestan and Russia and the Caucasus, fighters like that, those guys, their last like reason for fighting is money, it seems like. Because I've even like I've spoken with Taisumov in the past, and man, those guys seem like they're well sponsored, well supported by their country, or some entity in their country is supporting them to push them, as athletes to become the best in the world, to win a title. And Khabib's the same way, man. It's not about money. And they're talking about $5 billion. I don't think it's about money. Like, it goes beyond that. And Conor has overstepped his boundaries against Khabib, and he already beat Connor's ass. Let's be real, right? Like if you
Dominated
beat
him.
somebody,
Dominated
yeah,
him.
it was
That drives me
complete-
nuts too. Like you just beat Cowboy Cerrone, who we also saw, have kind of like he had an okay fight with Nico Price, but nothing to write home about. But like that's gonna get him the title shot. Like, no, I don't think so. Like Conor got decisively beaten that fight. I love people who like try to spin it like, well, there was this one moment in the fight where Conor, no. Habib like dominated that like from bell to bell. It was total, and he dropped Conor. People forget that too.
Yeah.
Like that was Habib put on an absolutely masterclass performance, and that's another reason why people got to be a little bit realistic here. Conor needs to get a big win over a notable fighter. Until he does that, any talk of him fighting for the title, and I know he can sort of do what he wants because Conor McGregor, it's a very tough sell to do with I think with the hardcore fans, because it's like, dude, like what have you done differently since fighting Habib? Like we haven't seen that, so we'll see.
Yeah, there's nothing really different about him. Yeah, a lot of people want to point to like, oh, Conor defended that takedown for like 10 seconds in the first round, and if he would have continued that, it would have been a whole nother fight. The reality is he didn't continue that. It wasn't a whole nother fight. It was a total domination, and like you said, he knocked him down. That's the big right there. That's the big juicy thing right there about that fight, is like he knocked him down. And who else has knocked down Conor? Not many guys, right?
No one to my knowledge. By the way, I don't mean to segue here, but it is kind of on the same topic. Did you see Brett Okamoto's tweet today about Conor, about how like fans were giving him such a hard? Here, I'm going to try and find the tweet here, where Brett was like just saying, where is it here? Oh, here we go. Merely an observation. I remember when fans were outraged about the UFC playing favorites with Conor McGregor early in his career, preferential treatment. Now fans are upset the UFC won't shift 3-4 title fights so Conor can fight 1 month earlier than what the UFC was offered. I don't have a problem with Brett's assessment of being like, fans being wishy-washy. I do have a problem with them saying that Conor did get preferential treatment, because he absolutely did. Like, what planet are you living on where you don't think that didn't happen? Him fighting Dennis Seaver. Right? Like, yeah. Am I the only one who forgot about that? Like, and that's like become a joke now that like, oh, he's got to fight Dennis Seaver. Like, no, there were, you look at the matchmaking, a lot of those fights were guys that were going to stand and trade with Conor, and Conor had a clear advantage. And, he had like, I'll give like when he fought Poirier, that was a good opponent, but there was a couple in there where it's like, come on, like, you could see that, he wasn't fighting like he never fought Edgar. There was a lot of other featherweights he didn't fight on his way up and stuff. So that's the only issue I had with that tweet, where it's like people complained about that. Yeah, Brett, because that was like a legit thing to complain about. And I like Brett. I'm not going after him. I just think it wasn't a very good take, that first part. That was my thing.
I don't think people are complaining about the UFC shifting 3 or 4 title fights to give Conor a fight. Well, they'd
be mad anyways, because then they'd say that, oh, what a disrespect to the GOAT Amanda Nunes if they would have moved that fight back, right? So like I'm cool. I'm cool either way. I mean, I really like, as long as they fight, that's all I care about. This is like become like, this is like the new is the GSP coming back thing. This is the new that's that version of this, is when is Conor going to fight? Is the old, GSP is going to come back and fight. Like, this is the new Conor thing, where it's like every week we hear, oh, this date, whatever, and then like we don't hear anything like concrete. So until they got the fight poster, until Dana White comes out and says this fight's happening, don't get too excited, people. Let's be realist.
Yeah, it reminds me of that one time Ronda Rousey, I forgot who she beat for the defending her title, and then at the press conference after the fight, they pulled out the poster for her next fight. I think she was fighting Sarah McMahon. Do you remember that, James?
I don't know, but I'm trying to. But I mean, it wouldn't be surprising.
That's the first double book. Khamzat's not the first double book. That's the first double book right there. That's what I remember.
Who did she
they already
fight?
Had the poster.
Was it? I'm gonna look that up. Was it?
I think it was Alexis Davis.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you might be right about that, actually.
Yeah, and then at the post-fight press conference on that fight, that pay-per-view, Dana pulled out the poster for the next title defense immediately after that, and I was just like, damn. I think a lot of people forget about that, but that was a pretty.
It was Davis. You're right. Good
moment.
Memory, John. Good memory. I wouldn't have known that.
And I have terrible memory, but I remember that for some reason. But yeah, so she's the first double book, not Khamzat. So keep it real, UFC. It seems like lately the UFC's been doing some selective memory, right? Like what was it? Who got the most wins in a short period of time? And they forgot. I think Big John McCarthy brought it up about how, did you forget about Hoist Gracie? You know what I mean? Like he won like how many fights in just one night? And they're
Well,
talking
yeah,
about
because
Khamzat
that's where things get a little bit complicated because there's sort of a school of thought. I actually got into an argument about someone about Dan Henderson because I said, I wrote an article like earlier this year talking about how Dan Henderson never won a UFC title. He did win a UFC tournament, but they didn't consider that like a title back then. It was just considered a tournament. And they also like if you look at like the history of the middleweight division, Dan Henderson was not the first middleweight champion. It was someone else. So I get where McCarthy's coming from, but also like the rules now are different than they were back then. They don't have one night tournaments, but yes, you are absolutely correct that like it was Khamzat because I think he got 2 wins and whatever, or no, was it him? No, who fought recently? I forget who it was, but they got 2 wins like back, like very close together. And so, yeah, you're right. Obviously if you fight in one night and you win, then obviously that would go a little bit further ahead. But it's funny, like John, like I like his show with Josh Thompson because they every now and then they'll take a couple jabs at the UFC, which I think is good. They need to be kept on their toes every once in a while.
Yeah, I think they have one of the best shows like to watch in MMA. I don't really watch that many shows. Only time I watch things is to research fighters, but I watch certain people. But yeah, them two have very good chemistry, and they know so much about the sport. And John's been there since the first event, so how could you compete with that? With anybody. So yeah, it's fun to watch those guys.
John is rep by do you know John is rep by Paradigm? By the way, I just found this out recently. I didn't know that.
I was talking to a manager yesterday, and I was telling them like Paradigm, they're making big moves all the time. Like out of management groups in the MMA, they're the biggest, man. And I think that they have the farthest reach, and that's why Israel Adesanya signed with them, even though he already had a management group representing him. Now the reason why he brought on Paradigm is because they could reach to Puma, and Puma will sign him because of that reason. And they're making so much moves like and I understand Big John McCarthy signing with Paradigm, and I think like that is a big step forward, having someone like that big of a management company represent you and just being in the sport, and it directs us even us in the media to bigger things in the future. With
it's like Vayner Sports too. Like they're going to have that big reach on a digital scale that you're not going to get with other managements. Like there's a certain management group, won't mention them. They rep a lot of fighters, but they talk about how they're the best management group. What deals are you getting your fighters outside of just the stuff in the bubble? Like, are you getting them endorsement deals? That's a great point, John. And that's something that we don't think of a lot with fighters. But if you're a UFC champion, why are you not getting a Puma deal like Israel Adesanya is? That if you're paying top dollar to have a manager, they should be looking at those things in terms of sponsorship opportunities. Iridium's another one that does a good job of getting like I talked to their sponsorship guy Jacob. Some of the deals he's getting for his fighters are incredible. So that's what you want in a management group. It's not just to have someone defend you or get you the best fights. It's that other step too about getting the sponsorship. So anyways, went on a segue again like I've done 50 times here tonight. But we're getting a lot of good talks here. It's great.
Yeah. But also like Sean O'Malley, he used to have a manager. Now he manages himself. And I think that's a big mistake. Of course, if you want to negotiate your contracts on your own, go ahead. As a fighter, if you think you could do it, do it. But look at Israel. Like Sean O'Malley has a brand. He could get big sponsors, man, outside of MMA. And I don't understand why he doesn't sign with somebody big like a Vayner Sports or a Paradigm or Iridium, just on the sponsorship side, just to make more money outside of just fighting in itself. It puzzles me sometimes why these guys like fighters are so stubborn in that aspect. Do you see that? What I'm saying, James?
Yeah,
like,
no, I think what O'Malley's going to end up doing is what Artem Lobov does. And I find this really interesting. So Artem Lobov does not have a manager. He negotiates all the fights himself. What he does have is like, and it's not like an official manager. He does have a lawyer working with him on the contracts, on the business side of things. Like Artem's a guy that actually fascinates me. I talked to him recently and he was telling me about how he even signed this contract with Arena Fight where he's going to be fighting in December. And, he knows how much he's worth. And like, he's a smart guy. Like that's how every fighter should sort of approach things. And it shouldn't just be, like I said, about getting the fights. Like I agree with you. I mean, you need like, certain managers are good about getting you the right fights. And that is important with your overall career. But like you said, with a guy like O'Malley, like, he's going to have to get to a certain level, I would think, where he's going to have to realize that, look, I need someone else to do this for me because he's just got too much going on. Like right now it's fine. But if Sean O'Malley ever gets big and big, and when I say big, I mean like him getting to like towards a title, that's where you will need a manager, because you don't want to have to deal with that during fight week when you got all these obligations from the UFC already, and then you got all these other sponsorship things. That's what a manager's for. They can take that away from you, and that's where like a Vayner Sports or a Paradigm does an excellent job of getting those opportunities outside the cage as well. So yeah, really something that doesn't get talked about enough, and I'm glad you brought it up here.
All right. Well, now I wanna. We don't got too much time left. You know, what I mean, we're at like the hour mark, so I want to get into this weekend's fight between the Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega. I think it's just so interesting, this fight, because I recently put out a tweet. You know, what I mean, I don't even know if it was a tweet or maybe I was just thinking about it, but you know, like if Jay Park never went on Ariel Helwani as the translator for the Korean Zombie, do you think because of that, this beef like kind of like extended out so long that they had to fight each other, and the UFC was pushing it so much that the path to the title, the Korean Zombie, the path to the title became longer for him because he has to fight Brian Ortega now? Actually, he could be fighting Volkanovski now. You know what I mean? He didn't have to be connected to Ortega anymore because he beat Edgar. Ortega pulled out, you know, last December. What do you think about that point of view, James?
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting because of the fact that you know, had like them fighting the first time like made sense at the time because of where Ortega was ranked at the time, because it'd only been, I think, a year. Like if they would have fought last December, it would have been a year that Ortega was out. He was ranked number 2. He'd only lost one fight in the octagon to Holloway. That would have made sense from that. So they put in Frankie Edgar, who I think we can all agree, you know, isn't the same Frankie Edgar that was the lightweight champion. I mean, he's lost a step, right? I mean, he won his last fight, but still, you get what I'm saying, is that, you know, we saw in, you know, the Ortega fight that he had and in the Zombie fight that he had, that he's not a top featherweight anymore. I think I don't think that's a mean thing to say to Frankie Edgar. So I think it's a tough sell for them to give Zombie a title shot when he's beating Frankie Edgar as opposed to beating Ortega last December. And then he had eye surgery, so that delayed things even more. But yeah, to answer your question about the Jay Park thing, like I think it adds a little bit more, but I honestly think a lot of people have forgotten about that because of how like long it's taken to actually get this fight booked. You know, we had COVID, we had the eye surgery, we had all these other things that went on. So it's not quite like Colby Woodley in the sense that it lost sort of all luster leading up to the fight. But I think that Jay Park thing would have been so much bigger if this fight actually ended up happening, you know, right when that whole incident happened with the slapping and all that stuff. If that had happened and then the fight happened, this would be much bigger. But it's still a great fight. Like, just forget about all the drama outside. The actual fight on paper is amazing and probably one of the best fights in featherweight history. And I don't have any issue with saying that.
And when you look at the training camps for these guys leading up to the fight, you got the Korean Zombie. He was supposed to go to Fight Ready in the States to train over there. You know, they have great facilities, all the coaches, you know, their training partners there. But instead, he decided to bring Johnny Case, Bobby Moffitt, Eddie Cha to Korea and have the camp in Korea. And that's something new for him, the Korean Zombie. And you know what he said? He said he spent $150,000 on this training camp. Do you believe that, James?
I do. I mean, it's not cheap to fly people in to, you know, have them stay somewhere. Like, I don't think those fighters are paying for their own accommodation. So, yeah, I'm sure that all plays into it. But look, this is a huge fight. He's got to win this. Otherwise, he's not going to get that title shot. If he loses, it's another 2 fights to get back there. I mean, it's unfortunate what happened with Yair Rodriguez. I mean, that was a win for him, minus the 1 second left in the fight, right? Like, had he won that, it would be an easier case to say, hey, you can fight Volkanovski. But unfortunately, that's a knockout loss on his record that he needs to get back on. And like I said, a Frankie Edgar win is not going to get you a title shot, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think, yeah, to answer your question, I don't think the price is that surprising. And I actually like the move. You know, with COVID going on, there's a lot of delays, a lot of quarantining, all that stuff. For him to do it at home, great move, in my opinion. I think it's going to pay dividends for him in this fight. And, you know, also he's more familiar with everything too. So I think that's, I think that's a good move for him. And conversely for Ortega, I like how he's training now with TJ Dillashaw and Archuleta and those guys over there, doing a bit of cross training with those guys, because you're going to get the high level training partners, and the strength and conditioning's got to be off the charts with how those guys train.
Yeah, my observation of the Korean Zombie spending this amount of money on this camp, and I don't even think he gets paid that amount of money to fight. But yeah, him investing in himself now, it tells you a lot about where he's at in his career. And we might not be seeing the Korean Zombie much longer if he doesn't win this fight. I believe that wholeheartedly. I feel like he's been through the ringer. He's had so many injuries throughout the years. You know what I mean? Before the military, he was injured. You know, remember he fought Jose Aldo. We saw that fight. He separated his shoulder and he had a bunch of other injuries, and he got those taken care of. And then when he returned, he fought Bermudez, and then I think he got injured again, had a couple surgeries. So his body is a wreck, man. I don't feel like he has much time. And the Korean style of training, and this is why I feel like the Korean Zombie has went stateside to train, is like the Korean style of training is just too old school. These guys are doing things that are probably unnecessary most of the time, and it wrecks your body. And I've talked to many other Korean fighters, and they feel the exact same way. Like things need to change. So I, with all that, I think the Korean Zombie, if he doesn't win this fight, man, we're not going to see him. Maybe one more fight after this, maybe fight out his contract. But if he does win it, he's going to get the title shot. And even if he wins the title, I don't see him defending it, that many times. I feel like he'll defend it until he loses, and then he'll call it quits. But yeah, man, that's just how I feel about the Korean.
No, I've never heard that before, and I think that's a great take. When I talked to Eddie Cha, I know you did as well. One of the things he mentioned to me was that he does feel healthy in this fight, and he was talking about pull-ups. He said apparently Zombie can only do like 2 pull-ups before because of his shoulder. He was still having issues, but he said this camp his conditioning's off the charts. And you got to wonder too, like it's interesting you say that about the Korean style of training, which I have no idea about. Obviously, white guy living in Vancouver, not getting any insight into that anytime soon, but you would think with Eddie Cha being there, he's a smart guy. If they're overdoing certain things, I would think he's going to step in and say, he'll scale back a little bit. Look what's at stake here. And not even that, but he's also got to keep him in check emotionally. I'm sure Zombie wants to knock this guy's head off, and maybe he might get a little bit too emotional, but Cha's like, no, we're focused. We know the task at hand here. Ortega's another opponent. We're not going to overdo it. Because you've seen fighters, when they fight pissed off, they tend to lose. Tim Means, when he fought Daniel Rodriguez, told me he had a bunch of personal stuff happen where family members passed away. He was not himself, and he paid the price in that fight. And you saw the fight after look much better. Your mental state is such a huge thing heading into a fight. So I think Cha, he's one of the best in the game. I think he's really got Zombie dialed in for this fight. So we'll see. I'm super excited for this one.
With Cha, I feel like he's coming in just a little too late. Of course, Zombie's gonna benefit tremendously having Eddie Cha there to kind of oversee everything that's going on. But I feel like all the things that happened in the past 10 years leading up to meeting Cha and adjusting his training and his nutrition and everything, it just, I feel like it's just done too much damage. And he could only redline his body so many times until it's like, I can't do this anymore. And that's where I think he's at right now. And I feel like he knows that, and he needs to get that title now or never. And that's why I'm picking the Korean Zombie to win this fight. I feel like mentally he's at another spot in his career. And Brian Ortega, he's a great fighter, and I love his style. But I just think the Zombie is just going to go in there and win this fight just because of that reason. It's just like do or die for him. Ortega on the other side, he has a new camp. He has new training partners. He's flipped everything on its head. And I think that's good for him. But I feel like he's meeting the worst version of the Korean Zombie. Like you said, he's healthy. I talked to Johnny Case. Johnny Case said, man, he hits harder than any lightweight that he's trained with. And that's something, man, because lightweight is the most stacked division, the most powerful division in the world. What do you think about Brian Ortega and the changes that he's made? And he's been out for 2 years also.
Yeah, I'll also give you my pick here. I'm also going with Korean Zombie in this fight, not only because he's been more active. Like you said, I was at Ortega's last fight when he lost to Holloway. That was in Toronto. And I think people forget that that was a lopsided fight. Do you remember going into that fight? People were like, Brian's going to win the title. Max, he's got weight cut issues. He's probably not even going to make weight. Look how bad he looked because they were supposed to fight earlier that year, and Holloway had the concussion. Remember that terrible media or the interview where he could barely talk, and then they had to pull him out of the card. And then he fights Ortega, and he pretty much did what I think people thought Ortega was going to do to Max, which was just completely dominate him. Like Ortega took a beating in that fight. I think the time off was good. I think 2 years is a little bit too long, and I know that wasn't completely his fault because obviously he got, Zombie had some time off with the eye surgery as well, but Zombie, just if this stays standing, which I think it will, I give a huge edge there to Zombie. This guy hits like a truck. Renato Moicano, that's a guy that does not get knocked out in the first round. Zombie did that with ease and sent Moicano up to lightweight. So I think that, you just look at what Zombie's been doing. Like you said, I agree with you. Him linking up with Cha at the right time, him linking up with the right management. I think Iridium's been a good fit for him as well. Getting, just not having to worry about all that other, stuff that goes on in the fight game, the politics of it. He can kind of let those, that team over there deal with it as well too. But it's also the fact that like Zombie's never been submitted in his career. I can't see Ortega taking him to the ground. And if it stays standing, I think it's going to be similar to the Holloway fight where I think Zombie's going to be able to pick his shots, and I think he's going to knock Ortega out. I do. I think the changes in Ortega's camp are good, but when you've been out for that long, especially when you've lost a fight like that, like it's pretty hard to rebound. There's a few exceptions to the rule, right? Like Edson Barbosa absolutely dismantles Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker absolutely dismantles Al Iaquinta the fight after that. So we have seen that's the exception to the rule. We might as well call it the Dan Hooker rule. But in general, when a fighter loses decisively, and I don't care how long the layoff is, if they have to fight an equally tough opponent that next time out, it usually does not go well for them. Like we've seen that. Like Ronda Rousey tries to stand and trade with Nunes. Her fight after getting knocked out by Holmes, she looked terrible. She gets knocked out in the first round. Like I'm not saying Ortega's going to get finished in the first round, but you do wonder why wouldn't he just, take something a little bit easier in between there. I know there's the bad blood between the two, but I don't know. It's a tall task for Ortega to come back after 2 years, fighting a guy who's one of the best strikers in that division, who has knockout power. It's a tall task, and that's why I'm picking Zombie in this fight.
Yeah, Zombie and Josh Emmett probably have the most power in their hands in the featherweight division.
Yeah.
And also Ortega, he's kind of a slow starter, and Zombie, you've seen him finish, I think, the last two guys in the first round, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of switched up his style too. And if Ortega comes out there as starting slow like he normally does, yeah, it's not going to be good for him, especially if he gets those hammers, onto that cranium by the Zombie. And yeah, man, it's an exciting fight. I hope it lasts more than one round because, for us, the viewers, it's like, man, we want to see every aspect of MMA come out in that fight. But yeah, I feel like the Zombie's going to take care of business pretty early in this one. And he's going to be like calling out Volkanovski, and Volkanovski is going to tweet something, and they're going to set up the fight early next year, and it's going to be awesome. Now, a couple things before. Oh, actually, Nick, I forgot it. I want to get your pick, man. We want to get the neutral point of view. What about you, man? What are you gonna do? Who you got, Zombie or Ortega?
I got Zombie. I'm with you, John.
All right.
I'm team Zombie, man. I love Brian Ortega, but I think I agree with James that beat down he took from Max, that was worrying. And yeah, he's had 2 years off, but that's the kind of beat down that changes fighters sometimes. And I was there with you in Busan. Zombie against Frankie. That was a complete dominance, wasn't it? I think it's first round, as you said. I think if he hits Brian's going to go down. I'm going first round TKO for Zombie.
All right. Well, we got our picks, man. I love it.
I can't go against.
Now,
can't go against him, man. Not with you.
Asia. You
Yeah,
can't go
Asia,
against
represent.
Asians, right? So yeah, we gotta. I guess we have to do that. Two things, man, that I like to something I like to do with every guest, and you're the first guest, so you're the first one. Is a couple two questions. Number one is breakout fighter of the year. Everybody's talking about Khamzat. Do you think Khamzat is the breakout fighter of the year, or do you see somebody else being that breakout fighter?
I think it's Gilbert Burns. I look at sort of the body of work overall in the year. I think what Burns did to Woodley, what Burns did to Damian Maia knocking him on. I know these are two guys that are not in the prime of their careers that he beat, but I just think the fact that this is a guy that was at lightweight and he's really made a name for himself at welterweight, and now he's going to fight his teammate. I think, just the quality of the wins is what I look at when it comes to fighter of the year. And Khamzat's run's been amazing. This guy came out of nowhere. He's really captured everyone's attention here. They're calling him the, middleweight Habib or whatever. But to me, it's Gilbert Burns. I think what he's done, to me, breakout means a guy that's really gotten to the next level. And we're talking about Gilbert Burns, who I think, there's a lot of people out there who feel like he can beat Kamaru Usman because he has the great ground game and he has knockout power too. So I think we've seen just an evolution in Burns's game. And I think him at 170, it makes it very dangerous. So he's going to be my breakthrough fighter of the year so far. What
about you, Nick? Who do you see as in the UFC, the breakthrough fighter of the year?
Sorry, I'm gonna have to be boring and say Khamzat. Yeah, I know you weren't on the hype train immediately, but I just remember the first fight I saw against, was it John Phillips from Wales?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. And then you're like, okay, maybe it's the opposition, but then he went and did that to Reece McKee, who hosts some of the shows with me and John. He watches a lot of Cage Warriors and he knows all the fighters coming out of Britain. And he said Reece McKee's no joke. And to see him do exactly the same to Reece McKee, he's like, okay, well. And then Meerschaert, he's no slouch either. One punch, man. I think this guy is future champ. I think he's future double champ. And I think he's going to chase Israel until Israel maybe moves up and vacates that belt. That's how good he is. And I go back to Gustafsson saying he's future champ. Everyone who trains with him said it before he even debuted. Hey, we got a comment. Comes out as one of the best fighters. Yeah. I'm boring, man. I'm boring, but I can't really think of anyone else. Gilbert, sure. Who else would you say, John? Those are my two off the top of my head. I'm trying to think.
Well, James brings up Gilbert Burns, and I love Gilbert Burns too,
Yeah.
man. One of the best to speak with, and like you said, the body of work. Look at what he's done. But I feel like him and Brandon Royval are neck and neck right now. And if Brandon Royval goes in there at 256, I believe, and beats Moreno, who's the number one ranked flyweight, hands down give the breakout fighter of the year to Brandon Royval. That guy came in and just first he comes and submits Tim Elliott, which is like the guy that almost submitted Demetrius Johnson, and then he goes and submits Kai Kara-France. Both guys ranked in the top 10 at that time, and he was a debut guy, right? A guy that just jumped into the UFC on short notice, and now he's gonna fight the number one guy within like I don't even know how many months period. I know the flyweights don't get that much attention, but I want to give some attention to the flyweights, and I believe by the end of the year, if Brandon Royval beats Moreno, man, he's the breakout fighter of the year. And now, moving on, the last question is, I want to start this thing with this show with the live chat is MMA Hall of Fame, right? MMA, not UFC, MMA Hall of Fame. James, you're the first one. You get to induct the first fighter or coach or whoever into the MMA Hall of Fame. They could be fighting now. They could be someone from the past. Who do you choose to pick, and why? Why would you choose that fighter or whoever it is, that person?
I think you guys got to realize that if I don't say George St. Pierre, they are going to deport me. I'm not going to be allowed back in my country. I love Canada. I never want to leave here. You know, we have good health care, nice people, good mountains where I live here in Vancouver. So I have to say George St. Pierre. And why wouldn't I? I mean, this is a guy that literally put Canadian MMA on the map. You know, before Conor, before everyone else, he was the guy. And you know what the great thing about George St. Pierre is, looking back on it now, this was not a guy who was talking a lot of trash. This was not, the closest thing he got to being like, you know, disrespectful was when he went in the cage and told Matt Hughes, I was not impressed with your performance. I am not impressed with your performance. No swearing. Nothing bad. And I remember people were like, oh, I can't believe he did that. But like, you look at that, compare that to like stuff that Conor said about like Khabib's wife and all this other stuff. Like, it's completely tame here. So I think it's such a huge, you have to put St. Pierre there because he was a great ambassador for the sport, always professional, worked his ass off, faced adversity and came back. You know, you talk about him getting knocked out by Matt Serra and then going out and beating Koscheck. Like, that was a risky fight. A lot of people forget he did not get a rematch with Matt Serra after that loss. He had to go fight Josh Koscheck, and that was a risky fight at the time because Koscheck, a great wrestler, but GSP out wrestled him in that fight. And then you just add in as well, you know, him coming back and beating Bisping and, you know, just everything he's been through. So George St. Pierre for me has to go in the Hall of Fame. I don't know how many other Canadians will be on here, but I will gladly pick George St. Pierre here. Great guy, great ambassador. I miss watching him fight. Don't want to see him come back and fight. You know, I didn't see Michael Jordan come back and play for the Wizards. So I'm cool with him staying retired, but George St. Pierre's got to get my pick.
I completely agree with you, man. I don't know, man. I feel like George St. Pierre is the greatest mixed martial artist of all time.
In terms of quality opposition, 100%.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing with him and Anderson where I disagree on. Like, people are like, Anderson Silva's the best of all time. He was the most flashiest. Not going to disagree with that. But when you're beating Nate Marquardt and Talis Latis, and the Maya win was good, but there's a few fights in there where it's like, you know, those guys would get destroyed in other divisions. So I kind of look at like GSP beat like Thiago Alves in his prime, you know, John Fitch, who like no one could beat. He was like the unbeatable wrestler. He beat, you know, Dan Hart. I mean, Hardy, maybe we could skip that one, but you know, he's had some like really tough opposition. Carlos Condit, you know, he fought, and even on the way up, you know, he had to fight tough guys. Sean Shirk, like, he didn't get an easy road, and that's, you know, people might say his style was boring, but he got it done, and he had to reinvent himself several times. So for him to overcome that, and like I said, the quality of opposition, that's what puts me in, and I'm there. If you want to say he's the best fighter of all time, I'm cool with that. But that's why I felt like he was a little bit different than Anderson in the sense that and it's not Anderson's fault. You have to fight who you're given, that you're supposed to fight. But I think the quality of opposition, you look at that resume for GSP, not a lot of bad fights on there. There's a lot of good wins on his resume.
Definitely a lot of good wins. And you got to understand, it's about winning. It's not about how you win. It's about winning and the opposition, the level of opposition that you have faced. And GSP, and also GSP has the story of, losing the title and then having to come back, from adversity. And I feel like most of the champions, they don't really have that. Once they lose the title, it's really hard for them to come back, from that. And GSP did it, and he also went up a weight class and fought for the title and snatched that up. And he's never actually lost the title after that, the Matt Serra fight. He kept both titles and retired with both titles. And I love it, man. GSP, you're the first one, man. In the Canadian picks the Canadian, of course, man. We have to do that. Everybody, thanks for listening. Next week we'll be back, same time, different guest. Nick, we love you, man. He's the producer. He's the boss. He's the juice behind the juice behind the juice, man. We're the juice. He's the juice. We're all juices. And man, thank you so much. And next week, I think most likely we're gonna have Tom Taylor on here. And another Canadian
content. I love it.
Hey, it seems like the Canadians are the best people in MMA media. I don't know why.
You said
guys
it, not
are the
me.
nicest.
There you go.
And
hey, I have one question for you guys before we get out of here. By the way, and great choice on Tom. Big fan of Tom and everything else. Okay, I have a question for Nick before we get out of here. How did you decide on using that song for the post-fight videos? I was just curious about that. I didn't even want to sing it. I'm terrible at singing. But how did you decide on that? I've always wanted to ask you that.
I didn't. The SCMP has a subscription to a library of royalty-free music.
Oh, so it's not even like a popular. I assumed it was a popular song. I don't know why.
Everyone asks me like, "Oh, I love the song. What is it?" I don't even know what it's called. But yeah, someone in the video department SCMP made a video for me. I didn't remember how it happened, what it was for, but they just gave me that little introduction for something we'd done, and they picked that song. And it's perfect, I think, because the lyrics just match the whole thing, and it's a really cool song. And yeah, sometimes I just want to keep the song playing throughout the whole podcast, for 2 minutes, but I've been told I can't do that. So I love it.
Either way, it's cool. I'm giving.
Cool.
I always wanted to know. I like to find out these little mysteries in MMA. Like, there's a few things that every now and then you see something, you're like, what is that? But yeah, I always wanted to ask you that. So I'm glad I got the opportunity to do so tonight. And
I'll send you the link. I think I can find it.
I was just curious. It's more curiosity. I was just wanted to see what you used there. So
it wasn't my decision at all, man. Someone did it for me, and I'm happy they did because I love the song. It's so
it works.
Cool. I think it's perfect. Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
All right, well, Nick, make sure everybody goes and follows James on at James Lynch on Sports on Twitter, Instagram,
and YouTube. Man. Same thing. Same handle at Lynch on Sports. And I gotta thank you guys for having me on. You guys know I'm a big fan of your content, so it was cool to be a part of this, part of the first one. I think we knocked it out of the park. Lots of good feedback in the chat. People, probably on the Pacific time zone are eating dinner right now. So the fact that they, left their families to come watch this, I think speaks volumes to us. So that's great. But seriously, like I said, huge fan of both you guys. So really happy to be on here, and I'd love to do it again. Just let me know. I'd be happy to do it.
I really like the new camera you got as well, James, man. Is awesome.
Yeah, a little evolution here. I don't know if you guys saw it during the stream. My light died, so I had to figure out a way to. I ran into the back and got my light in there. So a lot more lighting now with this camera. But the colors, look at this. It's like a bright autumn day in here. It looks like I'm tan, but I'm not at all. But yeah, no, it's I leveled up this week. I got actually a camera I've had forever. It's just I didn't know you could stream on it, so I just hooked it up and it looks great. So.
Yeah, man. I might ask you. I got one of those cameras.
Any media questions? My DMs are open, man. John knows. I talk to him all the time. So, and any little tips and tricks, happy to share those. So,
okay, I'll
man, just keep going, James. You do the most interviews. Then I don't even know. There's no comparison, and everybody's trying to follow.
Every day I go on there and like, damn, like you interviewed Ian Heinisch. I was like gonna reach out to him this week. I was like, oh, you got him before me. I was like, good for you, man. I love that.
I do that to you too. Like I'll be like, oh, I'm about to. Then I'm like, damn it, he got her first. Like Cynthia Calvillo, I got her tomorrow, right? And then you did it last week. I was like,
you're freaks of nature, you two. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you find the time. Yeah.
Like there's so much respect in the game. Like I give props to to John, to Mike Hack, if you work hard in this industry and you hustle, you have my respect no matter what. And there's it's such a it makes us all better. Like Submission Radio, same thing. Those guys do an awesome job. If I see them get a good interview, my first thought is like, damn it, I should have got that whoever guest. And then the thought is like, you know what, I got to level up, and that it's only going to make us better. And we have leveled up over the last year and a bit. All of us have. It's been cool to see everyone kind of go their separate ways. And even this channel, like the content you guys are getting on here is incredible. And I love, like, the first thing I do every morning is I look on my YouTube feed and see what's out there, and there's Jon interviewing Ian Heinisch. I'll go check that out. And it's just, yeah, it's cool for me. That's this industry. You got to keep the content going and all that. So it's been a lot of fun.
What do you got coming up, James? Do you got any interviews?
So my golden rule, Jon, if I have an interview lined up, I don't mention it yet because it could fall through. But I will say I've got a big Bellator interview tomorrow. I'll tell you off air tomorrow who that is. But interviews I've done this week, it's been pretty light actually. Just because we had Canadian Thanksgiving on Monday, but I got some things in the works, put some feelers out today, but working on some big stuff. But yeah, for this weekend, check out that Eddie Cha interview. After, of course, you watch Jon's on SMP, and then watch mine because we have different styles, and you can see Korean Zombie flexing in the background of my interview, which if you're into that, I don't know, but yeah, so lots of stuff going on. So yeah.
It's great, man. Everybody follow James. You know, I mean, we're gonna have him back on in the next couple months again. Like I said in my tweet to promote this live chat, you know, I'm just gonna have media members, coaches, and just other individuals, maybe even photographers. You know, just people involved in this sport that don't get that much shine. I want to kind of give them that shine on this platform, and just pick their brain about the sport and how they see it, how they view it. You know, like even nutritionists, dietitians, you know, those people are so vital to the fighters, and I feel like they don't get enough shine. And I think like this platform, this is what's going to be different about this this live chat. It's going to be people that, you know, you normally wouldn't see doing interviews or doing these live chats, and they're going to be on here. So see, you know, look out for that, and keep joining, share it, like it, comment, ask questions. Next week, Tom Taylor. Thank you everybody for coming on. I'll see you guys next week.
Well, thanks for